me take a time out and say a special good morning to one and all, especially those of you who are viewing, of course, GBN TV, whether it's channel 7, channel 11, channels 20, those of you who are social media platforms, Facebook page, YouTube channels, good morning. Wherever you are around the world, listening and viewing, welcome. It's To The Point. I'm your host, GT. I will be you until it's 10 a.m. this morning. And it's Opposition Tuesday here on To The Point. It's Tuesday, the 29th day of April, 2025. And representing for the opposition this morning, we have Mr. Nimrod Oliver with us this morning. And let's go over to him and say good morning. Hope you're able to hear me, sir. Good morning to you and welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, GT. Good morning to all your listeners locally and abroad in the diaspora. I know you're worldwide, so I know you have many listeners and followers of the program. And by the grace of God, I'm doing well.
All right, nice to have you. Nice to have you, of course, and nice to know that you're doing well. Let's start the conversation off this morning. And it's nice to have you, of course, under the circumstances where I want to get it started with your background in, of course, in law enforcement and so forth. Now, with your experience with, of course, what what generally everybody been hearing about the incident that recently took place in the shooting in St. Mark's. Tell us, give us a bit of your views on that, and to start the conversation this morning. Being your background in law enforcement, sir.
Yes, GT. I mean, obviously, if we've been hearing a lot, and as we speak, there still hasn't been clarity. I believe the RGPF did put out a statement stating that it's under investigation, and rightly so. They're going to do a thorough investigation. I have the utmost confidence in the RGPF conducting a proper investigation and bringing it. But with that being said, I think information is lacking. And when information is lacking, the void is filled by all sorts of what happened, and this is what happened, and that will happen. And then you and I both know that the rumor mill gets amplified, and so there's a lot of uncertainty. I think there needed to be a little more decisive action, and the powers to be, whether it's the head of the RGPF or the Minister of National Security, make a clear and concise statement, and so people's fears and anxiousness would be put to rest.
In situations like this, there's always those key steps that usually help to rebuild, that public, trust, after that critical incident. What's your take in terms of what is needed to be done now in order to rebuild that public trust?
Well, again, from the onset, there should be community engagement. The RGPF needs to be out there in the community, reassuring the community that, and at this, let me say, I empathize with the families and the victims, the families of the victims and the victims themselves that was wounded in the incident, and I pray to God for their speedy recovery. But the situation was a bit chaotic, and when there is chaos, there is no. When you have chaos prevailing, there is no clarity regarding what happened and where we're going from here. Again, the situation should be corralled, and the RGPF should, maybe be a little more decisive in taking control of the situation from the onset of the incident and up to this point, giving us clear indications, clear insight as to, not compromising the investigation, so to speak, but at the same time letting us know and reassuring us that all is well. They should be on the ground, whether it's the community relations team, they should be on the ground with the residents and assuring the residents that, look, the incident was very unfortunate, and that they will conduct the proper investigation. This would help bring trust, right? You have to restore trust and confidence in the nation's security force.
Let me also ask you this, sir. I mean, you as once again, you being part of course, law enforcement. Have you ever been in a situation where one of your fellow officers, was in a situation of such this particular situation to say, and how did it felt? How it felt to you? Of course, having a fellow, officer being in a situation of that nature.
So being in the police force for 23 years, yes, I was involved in an incident, in a shooting. I was also working when guys that I work with were involved in shooting, and then as I climbed the rank as a supervisor, I had to respond to scenes like that, and it's definitely not a good feeling. Look, firearms firearms are deadly. They can be deadly if not used properly, and the number one rule I always get from the academy, right, is to always establish firearm control, right? You are in control. So when things happen, you have a million and one questions racing through your head. As a supervisor responding to a scene, police involved shooting, or even not as a supervisor, even as a regular cop, the first person on the scene has to secure that scene, because again it's a crime scene, for lack of a better word, and you have to preserve the evidence. You have to preserve the scene to get it as pristine as possible, so that the investigators can have a clear picture. And the crime scene involves a number of things, right? You have the physical evidence as well as persons that were there. We live in a cell phone era. People would be recording, and you'd have eyewitness, and so you have to preserve as much as you can, as best as you can, and at the same time, the physicality of the location must be secured, must be maintained. So those are some of the things that your training would indicate to you, and it sort of becomes second nature. So when you get to the scene, despite of how overwhelming it may be, your training kicks in, and you go ahead and do what has to be done.
Building better police and community relations is always important, of course, for law enforcement, especially for all police officers and the force in general. Having that positive outlook, especially when it comes to the community, building that relationship. Now, from your law enforcement background, sir, what are some of the practical ways you can say can build better relationships with the community before problems like this particular nature arise in per se?
Well, in order for the police to do the job effectively, the police force, and no matter which part of the world, right? But specifically, we speaking about Grenada, your police force should have a very trusting relationship with the residents, right? If there's adversity and animosity between the community and the police force, then the policing will be hard. The residents would not trust the police, and so you're sort of operating in a catchpot where any little thing would set off a community, right? It's not always like that, as you well know. In the major cities, you have major riots and so that set off. New York City, we had a lot of those when the community feels like they're being imprisoned. Sometimes they speak out, because the residents should be free in their community. So the police now has to establish that corridor of invitation to the community, engage the residents, engage the community leaders, and establish that relationship where community feels safe and that they can trust the police. Look, GT, the best detectives in terms of solving problems, and not only crimes, right? You have crimes, major crimes, misdemeanor crimes, as well as nuisances in the community. But the best persons to solve that is the residents themselves, because in terms of the residents are the ones that have the information. So the police need to have a working relationship with the residents, and trust me, once you have that relationship, the rest is history, because those same residents will let you know where the issue are, what are the issue, who are the troublemakers, who are the ones you should keep an eye on, and you get the information, and then you in turn can make the arrest and or correct the situation. So it's a win-win situation when you have good community police relationship.
Now, what sort of or type of advice, I should say, would you give civilians? When it comes to interacting, especially with police, and to help keep the encounters, encounters safe, and respect for both sides in particular. What kind of advice would you like to, of course, throw to civilians when it comes to that, and especially in terms of interactive with the police? At times, we see sometimes the situation gets a little bit out of hands where civilians feel they're not happy with the situation or the outcomes of situation, and the protests may start and so forth. What advice would you like to give to civilians, especially when situation like that arises, with their interaction with police, encounters, to make that encounter of a more safer nature in general?
I've always said it, and it's probably not the most popular, but it's the correct answer. The police officer, especially when in uniform, is in charge of a scene. And we, the civilians, we owe it to listen to the officers. We might not agree with them, right? Because police officers are trained to get compliance, right? Compliance meaning, hey, I'm asking you to go right. Yes, I know you want to go left. It's easier for you to go left, but I'm telling you, you're not allowed to go left right now because of what we're doing. So, sir, ma'am, go right. Now, how we do it sometimes is where the problem comes about. And as police officers, we sometimes think that persons, the civilians, understand where we're coming from and they should comply. Sometimes, you have to de-escalate the situation, take a step back, and put it in a manner so where it's not confrontational. But it's imperative that civilians follow the lead of the police, especially when dealing with chaotic chaotic scenes, crime scenes, and all of that.
All right, we seem to have a short
break. You to tell me what to do, and you can tell me what to do, and you shouldn't be telling me what to do. But my advice is, as a civilian, the police officer is in charge of that scene, that location, and we should comply with his or her instruction.
All right, great. Of course, so, there's always that issue of, where, confidentiality, especially with, of course, with the public at large, and talking to the police comes to play. How do you feel in terms of why, or reasons why, sometimes you find the public not wanting to diverse information to police because of the confidentiality aspect that plays in there? How important it is for police for the police or the forces in general, to keep that confidentiality part of it, the conversation, especially when the information is being diverged to them, especially from the public?
It's very important. It's very, very, very important because, again, when there's no confidentiality, that breeds distrust, right? We live in a small society, and we pretty much know everybody, and so residents generally have a fear, because if there's a bad guy in a specific area, chances are, 3 or 4 or 5 persons might know of his or her business and shenanigans. And so the pool, it's a small pool, it's a narrow pool. So when an individual comes forward and say, hey, you should look at John, and I believe John is doing so and so, or see John do so, and I think John is dealing with guns or whatever, that individual might very well know at that point that John may have confided in them, or John may have seen that they've seen him, and maybe 2 or 3 persons know. So you don't want to contaminate that. You don't want to leak it out, and you go home and you share it with your girlfriend, who you figure you or your wife, and you figure you have confidence and you trust them. But when you're not there, they share it with their friends, and that's how these sort of things spread. But so it's important for the police force to conduct the investigations, gather the information, and keep it as confidential as possible, because that will help. And we go back to that word again, it will help build the trust that the community have in you, the police force.
All right, so let's take a short break, and when we come back, we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We'll be right back after the break. Don't touch your dial.
Cut, 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 chop, 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 shake, 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 great, great.
Angie, don't you know that you should not fly kites near electrical poles and wires? You should only fly it in open areas. If the kite gets stuck, it can cause power outages throughout the village.
Then I'll just pull it down, Johnny. Simple.
No, you shouldn't do that. You can get shocked. You should call Glen at 237 and they will come and help.
Alright.
Glen, energizing our Grenada.
Get ready, Grenada. The Maggie King of the Grill is back and bigger than ever. On Saturday, June 7th, Monroe's playing field transforms into the ultimate battleground for grill masters. Think you got what it takes? Then fire up those grills and show your skills. Registration closes Friday, April the 11th. So don't miss your chance to compete for that sizzling prize and bragging rights. It's food, fun, and flavor, all powered by Maggie. To register, call 407-8458. Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules. See you there.
GBN presents the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, Saturday, June 7th, Monrouge Plain Field from 11 a.m. Our partners, Maggie, the secret of great flavor, Grenada Distillers Limited, makers of Clark's Court, Grenada's #1 rum, Grenada Paper Products, makers of Cherish, Spring Soft, Harbour Bay, and Super Value Toilet Paper, and Royal, Quick and Easy, and Horizon Paper Towels, Budget Foods Inc., Classic Lighting, and Blue Bubbles PA Rental and Event Supplies. It's the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules.
Welcome back once again to our listeners and viewers here to The Point. And of course, representing this morning, we have Mr. Nimrod Oliver with us this morning, and representing the opposition and NMP here on the program this morning. And of course, with Mr. Nimrod's, background in law enforcement, our conversation is simply going to be, of course, be extended a wee bit, talking about law enforcement and so forth in general this morning. So Nimrod, welcome back once again, sir. I wanna throw my question to you in this particular direction once again. Once again, the importance of lessons that can be learned and how important it is for regular community engagement, with the police and the various communities around, especially trouble spots, as some folks may say it, and training for officers, especially around de-escalation. Because, that's one of the problems that we see occurring, being able to de-escalate situations in the proper manner. Yes. Talk to me in relation to that. How important it is for that regular engagement and training of officers, especially when it comes around to de-escalation.
Training is very, 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 very important. I know as officers, especially, being young on the job, you're like, oh man, you want action, you want to be on the street, you want to be in the mix of things. But throughout my career, I learned that, and I saw the importance, and then especially when I became a supervisor, the importance of regular training. Because what happens is that we tend to get very, very, very comfortable in our role as police officer. And what they teach you in the academy is not what you actually encounter in the street or carry out on the street. So, the police culture in terms of on the street is somewhat different to the book model. So hence the importance of going back every 3 months or every 4 months, 6 months maybe, to get a refresher course and dealing with with the public. Now, one of the things that we don't talk a lot about is that for those of us that have even the young teenage and kids in their 20s, they're not as communicative as those of us that are a bit older. Their engagement is with the cell phone and the tablet, right? They spend quite a number of time on the cell phone, and so their interaction is with the phone. So when they're faced with adversity in real life, it becomes challenging both for them and for the police officer that's dealing with the situation. So if you don't understand and know what you're dealing with and how to use some of your training to de-escalate that situation, a simple routine situation could get way out of hand because of a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the communication skills of our younger population. And I think a lot of that is in play today in our society, and that's one of the things I would want to encourage the RGPF to look at. Get those non-verbal, non-force techniques and verbal training. Get the officers to engage more in some of those training.
Now, what are some of the examples that you may have seen community policing really work? For example, and what made it successful, especially when you spoke about that verbal communication, which is important because sometimes you have the issues that comes around where that communication aspect with the police officer and a civilian gets to escalate for various reasons because the communication was just not right, especially coming from the police officer or maybe in return from the civilian, how he responds to the police. And some folks would say we all are humans, and you understand, and the police officer is a regular person also, but of course the nature of respect should always be thrown out to him. Now, from are there examples that you have seen in community policing, sir, that really worked, and what has made it successful in terms of what you have seen? What has been done that made it so successful?
So yes, GT. When I joined the NYPD in 1997, and at that time, community policing was very prevalent. As you know, New York City was was high in murders and drugs and guns, and again, the community policing was very effective in helping to eradicate the drugs and crime in New York City. I mean, you're talking a city that went from seeing about 2,300 homicides a year to in the late 90s, early 2000s. So by the time 2010, 2011 come around, maybe 400-500 homicides a year. So that was a drastic drop. But that was because the community officers, the community policing officers was able to develop and foster relationships within the community. And so information was passed because, you live in an area and you don't want the gang banging and the shootings and all of that. So they were able to pass information on. I mean, I very early in my career, I was undercover. I was, I spent quite a number of years working as an undercover plainclothes, and I could tell you firsthand how invaluable the information you got from working with the community. In the undercover world, we call them CIs, which is confidential informants, but they're members of the community, and they make arrangements and they pass you that information because they're too wants to see the crime and drugs and stuff out of the community. And, throughout my career, by the time I retired in 2020, NYPD had transitioned from the community policing per se to what you call neighborhood coordination officers or NCOs. And they had more, so it involved community policing, but they also had a more overall role. Where they were, responsible. Those officers assigned to the neighborhood coordination policing aspect of it. They were responsible for identifying and addressing neighborhood issues and working directly with the residents and community leaders. Their main focus was on building strong relationships and fostering a sense of community safety and trust, right? Key in all of this is that they were required to attend community meetings, visit the school, and follow up on previous incidents to ensure that it was corrected, right? So basically, they were like the problem-solving arm in a local community, but they were doing it by directly engaging, right, the residents. They were the ones going to the barbecues, engaging, talking to the residents, getting the information as to what the issue is and how best we can, and it's very successful. I was one of those that helped foster it in around 2014 or 2015, I think that program started. And by the time I retired in 2020, it was 5 or 6 years well on the way and very, very, very effective. In that, even though the crime had already dropped, the crime numbers and the major crime numbers continue to drop. Where New York City which was one of the worst cities in the US, became one of the safest big city in America. I think homicides, one year we saw homicides down to about maybe 200 and something, or just about 300. So the effectiveness is there if we take the step. I believe that the RGPF should put more focus on community policing, neighborhood policing, and let the officers engage the community, because we need to gain the trust of the community to ensure the safety of the community and the prosperity of our gem, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique prevails.
Lately, sir, I've been noticing the RGPF doing a lot of community engagement. I must give them some kudos for that. I've been noticing them. And they've been going around in various communities and being there and talking to, of course, the residents in the communities. But from your point of view, I
commend that for them, GT, and I would encourage them to beef it up, and to increase it. It's very effective.
Because I was going to ask of you to tell me what more could be done. There are specific trouble spots that we still see them not visiting for various reasons. Yes. You understand? They're not seeing, and those are the areas that I think the police and the time factor also plays an important role in it. Because sometimes you see they're visiting areas like 10 o'clock in the morning. The individuals who are the so-called troublemakers in those areas, they ain't going to be around 10 o'clock in the morning. You understand? The evening or the night time. So sometimes those are the times you may visit those areas and get to speak to these individuals who are so-called troublemakers, because those are the time they come out. You understand? Your take on that, sir?
So my assessment of that is that they need to take a evaluation, take a look, and see exactly when the issues are happening, and then you have to redeploy. Everybody cannot work the 8 to 4 shift. I'm a big believer in that. You cannot have the vast majority. If you have the vast majority of your issues on the 4 to 12 shift, meaning from 3 p.m. to 11 or 12 midnight, and let's say you have 60% of your issues happening during that time frame, and you have 70% of your workforce working from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., that's a problem. So you have to assess and you have to reassign. And reassign. Well, one of the things, GT, that I missed out when I spoke of the NCO program, it was specifically targeting communities that would have had problems, right? So I think I left out that part. So with that kind of approach, if we know, right, it's identifiable where the issue's coming from, we can't shy away or run from it. We have to confront it. Not confront it necessarily with hard-on force, right, initially, but police presence police presence is key. You flood the area. It might not be, long term, but you reassign some guys and you put some pressure on those areas for a month, 2 months. Let them see that the police mean business. You show force. You're not using force, but you're showing force. And oftentimes they would move, decide, well, everywhere we go, we're seeing police, so you making no sense. And it would help curb some of the issues and some of the problems.
All right. Mr. Of course, Olivier, we drew for a break. Let's take it when we come back. When we come back, I want us to diverge a wee bit in the process of moving forward and creating that broader conversation in terms of the policing and that police and the communities in general. I want us to speak a wee bit about that when we come back. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We'll be right back after the break. Don't touch it. Get ready, Grenada. The Maggie King of the Grill is back and bigger than ever. On Saturday, June 7th, Monroe's playing field transforms into the ultimate battleground for grill masters. Think you got what it takes? Then fire up those grills and show your skills. Registration closes Friday, April the 11th, so don't miss your chance to compete for that sizzling prize and bragging rights. It's food, fun, and flavor, all powered by Maggie. To register, call 407-8458. Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules. See you there.
GBN presents the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, Saturday, June 7th, Monrouge Plain Field from 11 a.m. Our partners, Maggie, the secret of great flavor, Grenada Distillers Limited, makers of Clark's Court, Grenada's #1 rum, Grenada Paper Products, makers of Cherish, Spring Soft, Harbour Bay, and Super Value Toilet Paper, and Royal, Quick and Easy, and Horizon Paper Towers, Budget Foods Inc., Classic Lighting, and Blue Bubbles PA Rental and Event Supplies. It's the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules.
Looking to take your business to new heights? Advertise with GBN on our social media platforms and get noticed by our 138,000 plus followers. Reach a massive engaged audience ready to connect with your brand. No matter your business size, GBN is here to help you grow. Contact us today at admin@gbn.gd or WhatsApp 407-8458 to get started.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. Good morning to those of you also via our social media platforms, Facebook page, YouTube channels. Good morning to you, and thanks for being with us this morning. Solveig, welcome back once again, representing this morning the New National Party. And of course, as mentioned before, because of your background in law enforcement, our conversation will certainly dominate on that particular nature this morning. Talking a lot about the recent activities and of course, giving your bits and pieces, sir, in terms of ways that we can curve situation of that nature in our beautiful Tri-Island. Once again, welcome back, Mr. Olivier. Let's talk about it. I did mention to us, moving forward, the broader conversation that we could have. Now, what small steps do you think, sir, both police officers and civilians in general can start doing immediately to improve the trust, even after difficult events, as an example of what took place in Grenada recently, sir?
Well, I'll start with the police first. I mean, I want to commend them. I think they did issue a statement regarding the incident. But with that being said, I think a little more information should be forthcoming and more decisive. I believe they were supposed to have a press conference this morning. I'm not sure if that went off yet and what was the outcome of that. But in order to get the community trust in incidents, when incidents like this happen, the police has to be and should be engaging. I know it's not, and sometimes especially younger officers will feel everybody in the community hate you, or hate me or hate us now, and I don't want to talk. No, it's not so. Yes, the incident happened, and it may not look good on the surface for the police. Hence, the reason why information should come out, and that would help quell some of the anxiety and the angst that exists in the community, and it will help develop the relationship that's needed, right? So that's from the police aspect. From the community, listen, it's hard in a way because of the social media era that we live in, and everybody wants to be the first, and everybody is an internet lawyer and an internet doctor and an internet psychologist and an internet psychiatrist, and so we live in a society where everybody wants to be the first to do something. I saw several videos came to my phone, and I've yet to look at it, and I probably wouldn't look at it, which with no warning, and after the video sent there's a comment, and you realize that it probably was the incident regarding a young man, one of the young men that was shot and probably was lying on the ground bleeding. To me, things like that are very troubling because we take incidents like that, things like that happen, and we send these videos. Somebody gets sick, somebody's on the ground bleeding, they chop up. And we send these videos around without thinking that this person may have family members that's not even aware of what happened. And so these images are all over the internet. I'm not sure at this point if we can change that culture, but I'm putting a plea out that us as civilians, we have to be a little more mindful because persons may have a wife, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, an alien mother, an alien family member, young child that come across these images because we send it indiscriminately. We send it to family members because we want to be the first one to send it to them. But what if they were not aware of what happened and now they open up their phone and see this instant heart attack? So sometimes things happen and we're not mindful of the effect, the after effect it has. Hence the reason why it's important for the first police officer to exercise calm, first police officer on the scene to exercise calm and secure that scene so that we could limit some of the things that we see. That's about the only way that we could probably get some control back into the situation. But if things happen and everybody, civilian in chaotic mode, police in chaotic mode, we have a chaotic scene, and when chaos exists, what happens?
So looking ahead right now, the situation has already happened, and we're looking for healing as part of it right now. What advice would you give, especially Grenada, as we continue to discuss on policing, the public safety, and building that stronger community ties with the police and the community? Because, you don't want to have that breakage between there at all, for any reason at all, that breakage in between there. What advice would you like to throw to that in terms of just looking ahead and creating that bigger picture?
Well, I would say it cannot be one of adversary, it cannot be confrontational. The police has to remain calm, focused, and focus on their job. And like I say, get the information out to the public. And we as the public have to allow the police time to do their job. They promise a thorough investigation, and they will keep us abreast. We have to trust the process, because if the police is confrontational and the civilian is confrontational, what are we going to get? What is going and burning down the station going to achieve? We have 4 individuals that were shot. We need to get to the bottom of it. We need to find out what happened. We need to find out why they were shot. First of all, we have to worry about their healing and to make sure that they get the best care to heal. That's us as civilian and the police also, right? The doctors and so doing their part. But we have to allow the police time to do their job. And there is a hierarchy, right? So, how much time? I don't know. I don't know how much time that you will need for investigation like that. But I would say, within a week or so, we should have a clear picture. Within 72 hours to a week, we should have a clearer picture as to some of the incidents that happened. It will be an ongoing investigation. It's not an investigation that's open and shut. And so the police will not be able to divulge and to give out as much information if in the initial process. If persons that were at the scene have information, I encourage them to go to the police. Not put it on social media and you saw. If you think you have credible information, go to the police and say, hey, I was there, I was 4 feet away, I'm coming 24 hours later or 72 hours later because, it happened, I was scared, I thought I was going to be shot, but I have this clip on my phone and this is what I saw transpire. Or I heard such and such conversation between the officer and the young man 5 minutes before. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but there was a conversation and arguing between. That's the kind of thing that we need to do as a society if we are to build from situations like this. The process has to start where both the police and the community have to establish a working relationship, because after all, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique belongs to each and every one of us, and we want to make sure that it's safe for us, our children, and our grandchildren, and the visitors that are coming to our shows.
How can communities push, for better policing while still supporting, the hard-working police? How can that, in terms of what the police do, how can communities still push for that better policing and still supporting what the police do? That comes around for the accountability and, the without blame, per se. You understand? Talk to me in relation to that.
Well, again, it's engagement, right? Each community, there's community leaders, there's the church, and we have that responsibility. If things are not going right in our community, there is a process, right? And I know there's also a trust issue, because people say, well, let's say there's, for example, if there's a community where persons feel there's a police officer that always comes into the community and abuses and beats up on young men for no apparent reason. He come and he just take Ibutu out or whatever and just start throwing blows, and they might feel that that's wrong. Yes, sometimes it will be difficult in situations like to say, well, if I go in the station, what would do? They're not going to take me. But the process is, talk to the community leader, talk to that individual that has a strong sense of responsibility in the community, and or the church leader, and they will engage the powers to be, meaning the higher up in the force, right? We have to be responsible. We can't just say, well, it's us versus them. No, the police officers are hired to provide our safety. That's one of their key functions. We, the taxpayers, are the ones that are paying them, right? So it's their responsibility to ensure that we are safe and that we are comfortable in the areas and communities that we live in. So we as the citizen, you have to hold them accountable. How you hold them accountable? By bringing the issues to the forefront and not confronting the police officer directly. You bring it up the chain of command until it gets to the police commissioner and or the minister of national security. But we need to start building our community-based group and have the community-based group focus on issues that are affecting our community, which will in turn help bring betterment to our community.
Youth involvement is important in terms of, and how do you see the police and the communities better engage in young people early? Because, getting most of the issues that occur these days, it involves young people. Tell me, sir, how can the police and the communities better engage young people and do it at a time that it's early enough to de-escalate situations before they get involved? Because young folk individuals and police don't seem to don't get that mesh for whatever reason. Talk to me.
So GT, one of the things, and I know you would probably agree with that. So when when it's like a Cara Day in pre-K, the small ones, the 3, the 4, and the 5-year-olds, we all smile when we see the young ones dress up in the police uniform, right? We all see it, right?
So true, yes.
How many times do we see the Form 3, 4, or 5 dress up in a police uniform for Cara Day?
Well, that never happens. I don't think Cara Day happens at the secondary levels and so forth.
Thank you. But we all smile and we all happy to see the young ones. But then you get to maybe, and maybe some primary schools do it also. Maybe some primary schools do Cara Day. But then you get to secondary school and that goes out the window. Things like that. I believe things like that should be maintained. You should have police officers, and not just police officers, firefighters, doctors, nurses, whatever. Go into the schools and talk to the young men. Right. A couple of weeks ago, I was at my alma mater talking to some troubled youths, and in talking to the principal prior, you hear some of the things that these young men were involved in, and when I walked in the room, I was shocked because some of the things that I heard that they were involved in, I was expecting. Like big fellas, so I was like, how do I go in there? Do I go in there hardcore? Do I go in there? And I walked in and I actually said to them, I said, I don't know if I'm in the right place. I'm shocked because I'm looking around and I can't see how any one of you could be doing what they say that you're doing. Right? But I made that point to say that the trouble with the youths start at an early age, because in that group you had some 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15, 16, 17, all the way up to about 18 years old, from Form 1 right up to like Form 5, right? But a lot of it, and when you ask them, I was dressed or whatever, I said, you know what I do for a living? And I think only maybe it was about 40 of them, and only one suspected that maybe I was a police officer. All the rest was, whatever. But we need to build that relationship with them throughout. As police officers, you need to be engaging. And part of that also goes back to the same community policing that you spoke about, GT. But we need to make sure that as police officers, police officers are not seen as adversary to the community, but rather they are part of the community and for community enhancement. So I would implore the schools and the police fraternity or the police department to develop a relationship where you have the officers come in throughout from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let the kids know that police are humans also, and policing is a noble profession. We shouldn't just be seeing policing as a job, but it's a profession. And I believe by doing so, that will help, that officer kind of cool. Because most time I could tell you throughout my career, and even now you talk to the guys in the RGPF, and they're individuals that have great relationship with kids that others might think are trouble kids. You talk to the kids, you engage them. Don't be aggressive towards them. You walk in, they come up to you, they ask you a question. Sometimes they just want to make conversation, but you might, think they're bothering you or no. Engage them. Be charming. Show empathy, show concern.
All right. We have a break there from, of course, Ms. Oliver, in that final point. I hope when he comes back, we could continue the conversation. Ms. Oliver, let's. I have a final question for you, and then we suddenly accept some calls, 435-2041. And it's part of the conversation that we have not gone to as yet. But the importance of mental health awareness, for officers, civilians alike, the importance, because proper mental health plays a pivotal role, especially for the police officer, in terms of how they will deal with someone, how they feel as a person, that interaction that they do and they do with each other, that interaction that the civilian will have with them. Your mental health plays an important role. Talk to me in relation to that, sir. The importance of mental health awareness for police officer and civilians alike. And then we take some calls.
It's very, very important, GT. Again, it's part of training, part of the refresher course. I'm not sure if it's on the curriculum for doing the initial academy training. But look, police officers are not one-dimensional, right? In a society as Grenada, where it's it's smaller than the metropolitan areas, and so you probably don't see it as much. But I'm saying that it's not one-dimensional in that, police officers often have to be the police officer, the counselor, the doctor, the nurse, the therapist, because you engage people and you hear all their problems and they tell you all their problems. But now you as the individual, you have your own problems, and then you engage 10 different persons during your shift and you have 10 different things that you had to deal with. You are human. So of course, yes, you would like, man, and it's a lot going on. So it's important for the job, the police department, to ensure that officers' well-being are met and taken up. I'll give you a little story, GT. After 9/11, so 9/11 was September 2001, sorry. And a month later, we went in, we were working 7 days, 12-hour shifts, 15 hours a day, no days off, right? And one of the days that we went in, they put us all into a bus and they brought us to this hotel, and they had people there, giving massages, talking to you, nice food, all of that. And I was like, well, why are they doing that? We still digging the towers looking for bodies. And I remember asking one of the inspectors at the time, I'm like, Inspector, why? And he goes, Ali, this is to make sure that guys remain focused and to ensure that some of you are all right. That was his way of explaining, but it was the whole mental health aspect of it, because you were dealing with a situation where numerous people died. It was tragic, and for over a month you're in that environment dealing with that. So the break, they made sure and put the break in so that we could refocus and to know that, hey, there's things outside of that. In terms of the civilian, one of the things that I want to see our police force, and it goes to the mental health also, engage in. Look, when you're responding to parties, and so we all know when there's high usage of alcohol and even drugs, it's persons are not really focused. So our officers, the police officers, has to be mindful of that. Right? I don't know if you ever have a conversation with a drunk man, but you could never be right with a drunk individual. So you have to be mindful of that, and you have to again engage, utilize your training and utilize your tactics to ensure that this situation does not escalate beyond. Civilians, I'm not sure how we can go about ensuring that civilians get that mental health training, because it's broad based. Within the organization, it's something that the organization can ensure, put it on the calendar, and ensure that officers get that training. But civilians, we have to maybe check ourselves and ask ourselves the question: are we okay? Am I stressed? Do I need to talk to somebody about things that are happening in my life before I go there and take my rage out or engage persons and be confrontational for no reason? But again, that's a little more difficult to put on a scope.
All right, great. 4352041, the lines are open. We have a few more minutes before we take a wrap for today's program. Let's go to the phone line and engage our first caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning, and forgive me for having you on hold for that long.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Just a few recommendations. I think one of the reasons why people may be fed up with some of the ways that police officers are doing. I want to recommend one, that you have within the police force what is known, as I term it, a PCU, a police complaint unit, where when people have certain things against the police officers, it is run by a competent lawyer paid by the state, because the state cannot have people seeing police doing stupidness and want the police force to be confidential with people or people to be confidential with the police force. You know, it's only Sunday I was hearing about this thing on Facebook, of which a police officer, it is alleged, beat up this woman so bad, and they were causing the police officers, threatening him that they too will beat his so-and-so and all kind of thing, because this woman is my nephew, is my niece, and doesn't beat her. So the fella saying, and he causing obscene language to the police for beating up his wife. And the fella is saying it was only alleged that I hit a woman and I spent 3 days in jail, and you're a police officer and you're doing the same. So I think the police force should have what is called, what I call a police complaint unit of certain nature, of which people could go there and make complaint to the police when things go wrong. You hearing me, sir?
Yes, we are hearing you. And thanks for...
My second point is this. I believe, this is just my belief, that when things go wrong in the police service, the police cover up in investigation for police officers. It may be bad, it may have its good. I am making a wild recommendation now. The police commissioner could be a civilian. Assistant police commissioner could be from the office and the ranks. When the police commissioner takes up an investigation, he or she tends to they want to control the police force under their care to make sure that it's looking good. A police commissioner who is, if the legal ramification will be put in place, who is a civilian, will recognize that he represents the whole state on crime, not just to protect the police force. That's my second recommendation. My third recommendation is that the police commissioner as a civilian should have a unit that will monitor all social events as to anything that is damaging the police force name or the police officers having criminal action against persons must be called in, talked to, and tell them, well, we just putting you straight, behave yourself. We will not allow that to happen any longer. I cannot see myself as a police commissioner and watching police officers in the force for 10, 15, 20, 30 years do not get promotion, and they're still at the rate of constable. And they're just napping around. No, you have to call in them, talk to them. What is their priority? Is it good that they stay in the police force? Look at the police officers as a means of developing society, and that they themselves must be developed thereby. My third point is this. A few years ago, while the previous administration was there, we recognized that police officers who were supposed to be promoted, even though they passed the exam, people who didn't write the exam was promoted until they had to take the government to court. With government interference in police officers' job to such calamity, it does dangerous thinking for the civilian towards the police force. And my last point on the issue, I believe they should have what I consider as CAC, Communities Against Crime, of which the police must be confidential with the communities and see if they could help solve crime, as the speaker on the program now was saying before. Thank you very much, GT, and have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. And that was, of course, a pretty lengthy contribution there. Of course, Mr. Olivier, I hope you could respond to some of the comments that the caller didn't make, because we are a bit strapped for time. So let's see how you could respond to the caller there.
All I would say is he raised 4 valid points, and it seems like he might be a community leader, and I will encourage him to put these recommendations and paper, and put it out in the community. And so I'm not sure if all of them would be enacted or taken up on the agenda, but he did raise 4 very interesting points that I believe might be able to help the development of the Royal Grenada Police Force. Now, I can't. The only sort of thing is, I'm not speaking for the Royal Grenada Police Force. I do know they have the Royal Grenada Police Force does have a complaint system, but I think the point he was trying to make is that you shouldn't be making the complaint, which I think I spoke to earlier on anyway. You shouldn't be making the complaint on a police officer to another police officer. I believe he was trying to say it should be run and operated as a civilian entity.
Okay, understandably so. Let's take another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Caller seem to be having an issue on their side. We were able to accommodate that. Let's take our final caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, GT, and good morning to Mr. Nimron Olivier.
Good morning.
Nimron, I know that you are also the caretaker for the NMP in the Northeast area. I just want to find out from you what you think of the representation that is being given to the people up there, and share to us as to your feelings, your true feelings about this, and what you think can be done better. Thank you.
Go right ahead, please.
GT, I was hoping that we didn't get no politics and we keep it.
I was not intended to go the political way this morning, but the question comes around so much.
That's fine. As a resident of St. George Northeast, I do have some issues with the representation that we are getting. I think there were a lot of promises that were made to the various communities in the Northeast, and so far has been delivered. I believe that not having the representative in the cabinet at the cabinet table. As far as we know, on paper, not being sitting at the table when the pie is being divvied up, the Northeast is falling short. I'm hoping it's coming up on 3 years in the administration, and so far I have not seen anything significant that done in the community that was done to help the St. George Northeast constituency. I'm not sure what can be done in the remaining time to enhance the lives and livelihood of the residents, especially the younger population within the community of St. George Northeast.
So we get to that point of the morning that we're going to have to take a wrap for today's, of course, program. I want to thank you a whole lot for being on the program this morning, and interesting conversation thus far. Anything in closing before we take a wrap this morning?
I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you to your listeners. Like I said, locally and in the diaspora, and for us to all remember that we do have a part to play, whether we are civilian or police. You do have a part to play to ensure that our community remains safe, because we're the ones that have to live in it, and we have to ensure that we leave it better for our children and our grandchildren.
Mr. Nimron Olivier, I want to thank you once again, and best wishes goes out to you for the rest of the day, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Hey, folks, that's how we're going to take a wrap for this edition of To The Point for today. Join me again tomorrow for another edition. Have yourself a great one, folks, and goodbye.